Welcome to Galaxy Brains, the weekly podcast from Galaxy Research. Bitcoin is back, but don't you dare call it a rebirth. The last of us here when the rest just leave Earth. I'm passionate, clear when I'm blasting these verse. Yo, master the purse, pull the strings like Pinocchio. And yo, I sing when I work, always keep it bespoke. I'm so relax and take notes. I'll take a couple shots from way downtown. Paul Pierce on the block. When he steps on the street, all of Soho claps. You can hear him yelling out, calling Novogratz. People always ask if I'll stop rapping. I got Noster backing up. My guest is Thomas Pacchia, and I hate going slow, so you know that I love speed. Raise a glass, take a knee outside of Pubkey. I'm giving shouts to all the people who dabble in game. Nothing but love to my Galaxy Brains. As always, I'm your host, Alex Thorne, head of firm-wide research at Galaxy Digital. We have a great show. Thank you for listening to Galaxy Brains. Mike Novogratz, CEO and founder of Galaxy, joins us to talk macro and react to the Fed. And Thomas Pacchia, founder and proprietor of Pubkey, the best and only Bitcoin bar in New York City, is our guest. But before we get into all of that, I need to remind you to please refer to the link to the disclaimer on the podcast notes, and note that none of the information contained in this podcast represents investment advice or an offer, recommendation, or solicitation by Galaxy Digital or any of its affiliates to buy or sell any securities. Let's get right into the show. Let's go now to our expert in macro, CEO and founder of Galaxy, Mike Novogratz. Welcome to Galaxy Brains.
Galaxy Brains, first time I'm on the damn podcast.
It is. It's the first time.
What took so long?
We were waiting for you to ask us to come on. We were trying to get so famous you couldn't stay away, but we're working on that still.
Yeah, when I had a podcast, it was like hoveled in my office. You got your own little studio.
Well, I didn't pay for it. I know Galaxy did, so thank you. Mike, the Fed raised rates 25 bips today. And signaled, further rate hikes. It seemed a little hawkish to me. What was your takeaway?
Listen, I think he was right up the middle, what was expected. He was very clear. We probably will have a credit contraction based on regional banks being under stress, and that is rate tightening. And so he broadly was saying, I was pretty hawkish 3 weeks ago, right, at Humphrey Hawkins, testified that we might have to go a lot more than we thought. That's off the table. They went 25. They might or might not go next meeting, and then they're going to pause. And that's what the market is pricing. That's what their dots say. Mm-hmm. Now, the market's pricing they're going to cut rates sooner than they're saying they are. But he gave a pretty clear indication that this banking crisis will have a negative impact on the economy, and that is a tightening. And so the market broadly has read it dovish, right? Fixed income is a lot higher. Mm-hmm. Crypto traded really well beforehand, and it was a little buy the rumor, sell the fact. Remember, we've gone from 17,000 to 28.9 the high today. Yeah. And so we've rolled over pretty hard. I think this is just a position washout. Like, of us crypto guys, everyone had kind of gone all in a little.
People went a little too far over their skis.
And so this is a natural pullback.
And it's not, right now I think we're trading at like 27.5. It's not like a massive retrace.
Yeah. But if you look at fixed income, it's traded 25 basis points higher. And so you would have thought, okay, there's an ease being priced in. Crypto would have normally done better with that, other than it had front run it.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you think so it's not the dot plot isn't much changed from the last time it saw. So they're sort of hanging in there. Is that what they're trying to signal?
I think they're basically saying 5% this year, and then goes down to 3%.
Yeah.
And so they see the economy and inflation slowing. We have a slow economy already, and they see it slowing more. The labor market's stubborn, and so the Fed is, not ready to say they're going to cut rates this year. The market is.
Yeah.
And we'll see who's true. Powell was very straightforward, though. He said, listen, we're just guessing. We'll react to the data.
Yeah.
And so if the data rolls, and we'll see. It's complicated in how fast the transmission is. Regional banks grow lending at around 16, 17%. Money center banks grow lending at 1%. They don't lend. Mm-hmm. Right? It's not, Chase Manhattan, Citibank, they're not in the business of lending. They have consumer lending through credit cards, but not to
businesses,
commercial
mortgages,
real estate.
Yeah.
Right. And so regional banks stop lending because how do you build up your bank capital? The best way to build up bank capital is to stop lending.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. They've got the duration stuff they can't just easily unload. That's the problem. The other stuff they have are loans. They can loan less.
Yeah. They loan less.
Do you think would you say, like, broadly speaking, that the part of the thing that gave the Fed the power, the comfort to continue, because a lot on the street were saying maybe a pause right now. I had talked to some smart people who said that anything other than a pause could be a massive policy blunder, was a quote somebody said to me. Is it because they're out here saying we're backstopping the banking system anyway? So, like,
what's interesting. Why did the market roll over and even crypto roll over? Is during Powell's press conference, Yellen was quoted at her own press conference on something else saying, well, we're not going to actually raise the deposit insurance level at this point. And that was seen as really negative. I have no idea what the context of that was. I think there was a big school of thought among central bankers that if they pause, people would see it as, got it, things are much worse than they are.
Interesting.
And you saw 5 or 6, central bankers on the tape, ex-central bankers saying that. And so I thought they should pause and say, hey, we got new information. We'll see what happens. We got another meeting, in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
What's the big deal?
Right. And they sort of step it down. They're still not, they didn't do 50.
Yeah, he did 25, and they'll see what happens next month. My guess is this was the dovish pause that people were thinking about, and that's why fixed income reacted the way it did. I think stocks rolled over a little bit because Yellen spooked them. And again, stocks have bounced. Crypto hasn't. So stocks rolled over and then bounced. Crypto rolled over and has rolled over. I just think that, markets are always, prices are set on the margin. It's more buyers versus sellers. A lot of crypto people had bought and got very bulled up. We have to remember we still have a big headwind in government regulation.
Yeah.
They are out to get us right now. It is freaking driving me crazy. It feels un-American. I've spent a lot of time in the last 3 days on phones with politicians, both Dems and Republicans. But, they've got a banking crisis to worry about. They've got a debt, ceiling showdown. That
I know.
Clock is ticking.
We're in emergency measures or whatever they call right now, where they're moving money around in their pockets
and
to pay for the government.
Crypto's just, not high on the priority of most congressmen or senators. There's some that really care about our industry, which is great.
Yeah.
But they got bigger fish to fry right now.
Yeah. I've been banging the drum the last week and a half or so, 10 days, on Bitcoin as a really interesting alternative to the banking system, just because it was forged during the last financial crisis, the last banking crisis. What are your thoughts on this overall?
Listen, I don't think it's an alternative to moving money around in payments at this point. The reality is just the system isn't big enough for the amount of stuff that happens. That says I think it's a great report card on financial stewardship. One of the reasons Bitcoin is rallying and crypto is rallying is because the Fed is going to get easier. We just took a balance sheet, was in the middle of QT, and did some QE.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look, we took back half of quantitative tightening in 3 days.
I saw that.
And Bitcoin has always been a response to populism. Governments can't stop spending money. And, they did the right thing, bailing out the depositors. It costs money. And so as the market perceives, there's no way they're getting out of this giant 130% of debt to GDP, without monetizing it, it just helps the narrative of Bitcoin. Also, instant settlement, all the other parts of crypto, like stable coins literally should be smiling right now because how you move money around on the weekends and, being able to move money offshore and all of that stuff, the crypto rails get highlighted at a time like this. Listen, I think it's a fundamental right. People should be able to buy any asset they want to store their hard-earned wealth.
Yeah.
And so it's crazy the government has tried to impede us from owning Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. But they are.
Yeah. What gets you excited about the opportunity? I mean, obviously 2022 was I'm going to use a euphemism. It was a rocky year in markets. It was rocky in the crypto infrastructure space. Obviously Galaxy, we're still here building. What gets you excited about Galaxy and the opportunity for crypto?
Listen, the one thing I am positive at is that our firm, our people, and the whole industry is resilient as hell. Like I spent my life as a wrestler, and so we pride ourselves on being tough and resilient. But man, crypto guys are maybe not as tough as wrestlers, but they're pretty damn tough, and they're creative and resilient. And so Bitcoin has rallied from 17 to 28 despite Elizabeth Warren and Gary Gensler and regulators around the world trying to smash us, despite fraudsters like Sam Bankman-Fried and Kyle Davies and Zoo, whatever his name is, defrauding people, despite BlockFi and Celsius and Genesis being poorly managed, right? And so we had all kinds of crap. And despite all that, we're higher in price. We're higher in price not because, giant institutions are buying tons of it, because crypto is a community-based project. Bitcoin, Ethereum have giant communities that believe in it and care about it. Retail is driving us back. There are institutional buyers. We've had hedge funds buying. Our job is to get institutions, our job at Galaxy, into the space. But I want to give a shout out to the crypto degens, the stackers, the sat stackers. The sat stackers, the OGs. They are actually providing the floor and support. And I tell it to politicians all the time. I was like, what are you guys talking about? Like, this is a populist movement.
These are your constituents.
Yeah.
Mike, thank you so much for joining Galaxy Brains. Great to have you, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Awesome.
Let's go to our guest, Thomas Pacchia, good friend of mine. How are you doing, Thomas?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah.
Great to see you.
Great to have
great
you.
in the orange.
I appreciate that. I love this sweatshirt. So Thomas, among other things, which we'll get into, owner-proprietor of Pubkey.
Pubkey.
The best bar in New York, and the only Bitcoin bar.
It's a Bitcoin cultural center embedded within a New York dive bar.
Which is, and has excellent food, by the way.
Yes.
I think that's what really sets it apart in my mind. Even if you don't go there to eat, just knowing that it stands out.
Yeah.
You should eat, by the way. Get the Dirty Dog.
Recently, we've been told that we have one of the best burgers in New York City and one of the worst cocktails in the city.
Which one is that?
It's the Orange Pill.
The Orange Pill.
The Orange Pill pleb, we're retooling, or we're going to lean into it being objectively the worst cocktail because that'll be a novelty.
It's kind of better.
It's like, let me try how
what
bad
is it?
this
It's
is.
a High Life with like grenadine or something, or Campari in it?
It's a High Life with like a shot of Campari and like sweet vermouth.
Why the vermouth?
I don't like it.
But if you order the Orange Pill, you get a free Dirty Dog. They got great hot dogs there.
Yeah.
Or at least that's what my sweatshirt says on the back.
Yeah, we never we haven't actualized that promotion yet, but it does say that in the bathroom. Nobody's come out and said like, you owe me a Dirty Dog.
Great place near Washington Square Park. Encourage everyone to check it out. And I think people who watch our YouTube version of this show will see that I've actually worn the Pubkey paraphernalia sweatshirts before, and I'm wearing one now. So
we appreciate you very much.
I recommend it highly. But we'll talk about Pubkey and what your plans are for Pubkey.
Sure.
What you've done so far beyond simply just a dive bar, cultural congregation center.
Sure.
And it is a good bar.
Thank you.
But let's get into some other stuff. You can give me your history in Bitcoin, and I'll just set the stage here with I met Thomas. Thomas you're a lawyer, actually, technically. Recovering.
Yeah.
Thomas worked at Fidelity's Bitcoin and blockchain incubator.
Yep.
Even before, I was at Fidelity before I actually worked in that group.
Yeah.
That's how I met you. What brought you there?
So, in a previous life, I actually used to work down here at a law firm called Cadwalader. They're, a couple buildings away. Swap and derivative, capital markets stuff, offtake agreements, long-term, like sales contracts, real sexy stuff. ISDAs.
Yep, ISDAs.
ISDAs, to be precise.
Love the ISDA.
So I was part of that class of Bitcoin, like late 2012 or early 2013, that were sort of like rescue dogs, like not really in it for the libertarian stuff or the Silk Road, but like that's a lot more exciting than what I do on a daily basis. So fell down the rabbit hole like from there on out. Bounced around the space a little bit, went back to NYU, got a master's in finance, wrote a Bitcoin thesis on merchant adoption, whether or not that was a viable use case. It wasn't. Mm-hmm. Joined a startup called Digital Asset Holdings, which in ancient history was a Bitcoin company. Then it became sort of distributed ledger technology. Wasn't really in it for that. And that's when I joined Fidelity. So late 2015.
Yeah, so that was
Yeah.
early days in Fidelity's formal exploration of Bitcoin and blockchain technology.
It was the Bitcoin Incubator at the time, and then it was
Incubator
rebranded
to the Blockchain Incubator.
The blockchain, yeah. That was something that followed me for a little while.
So
I felt cursed.
So later I worked as director of blockchain research, actually technically adjacent to the Blockchain Incubator, but in the same department. So you were, what did you do at the Blockchain Incubator, the Bitcoin Incubator?
So I was in like a flex role between like legal risk and compliance, leveraging sort of the prior background in the law. But also, I think like David Knitsky and I were two of the first, I guess, people with a background in Bitcoin. So we were hired as like subject matter experts.
Got it.
I think on a daily basis, I worked on a range of products, from like the mining project, Fidelity Charitable, the early iterations of what eventually became Fidelity Digital Asset Services, so the early architecture of the custody and exchange platform. But on a daily basis, it was really sort of neutralizing legal risk and compliance threats to the existential nature of the Bitcoin Incubator.
Yeah.
So for a while there, I would go in with a paper wallet, $5 worth of Bitcoin on a paper wallet, and build a transaction, just start from the beginning. Yep. And I had a pretty good, success, like conversion rate. Yeah.
I love that. So
I wrote a blog, like the first, I guess, internal Bitcoin blog called The Bitstillery.
Yep.
With someone, Brittany Hamtel at the time. Yeah, it was fun.
I think I remember reading that, and I don't think if any Fidelity people are reading, I think they've nuked that internal social media platform. It was called Ribbit at the time. But if it isn't nuked, go find it, The Bitstillery.
It was extraordinarily difficult to publish on.
It was not a good platform.
It was not easy. It was fun, though.
Yeah.
I was quoting like Michelle Papachou at the time.
Yeah.
Like Trilemma.
R.I.P.
Yeah.
So after Fidelity,
yeah,
what have you been doing in Bitcoin in general?
Started a private fund called HODL Capital, mostly a Bitcoin fund. We were looking at, I would say, altcoin opportunities, really. So things that had either economic or technical vulnerabilities that we could structure trades against. Mm-hmm. Short-lived, not easy to short, I would say, shitcoins. In 2018 or so, we started to focus on the flared methane gas utilization for Bitcoin mining operations. Right. So we basically pivoted completely to mining and Hashrate market infrastructure developments. And that's what we've been focused on ever since. Sunset HODL Capital started a new company called Hash Function. And Hash Function is building out risk management products for mining operations, helping accelerate the development of Hashrate market infrastructure. And I've come full circle because it's back to the swap and derivatives, which is good because I think they're really useful and impactful. They have a lot of potential for miners, but I'm conflicted about the ISDAs again.
Yeah, so let's go first on the Hashrate derivatives and market infrastructure. Then I want to talk about flare gas too, because that's a really interesting topic.
Sure.
What is the idea here? That miners are inherently long Bitcoin, that there's some hedging they can do? Or is it what are they, long ASICs? They're long hash?
Yeah, they're short hash rate.
Short hash rate.
Short hash rate.
Explain it to me.
So everything on the cost side is denominated in dollars or the local currency. Like that's the real world, paying for electricity, building a data center, paying overhead, sourcing the equipment, keeping the equipment happy and, functional. Everything on the revenue side, once you're up and hashing, is denominated in Bitcoin, really. And there's really no way to hedge out. There are some rudimentary ways to hedge out some of the volatility risks embedded within Hashrate, but it's got a long way to go. And optimizing the revenue side of the equation, I think, is going to become increasingly important for miners of all shapes and sizes, public, private, on-grid, off-grid. And it's been, I would say, underdeveloped over the last however many years for a number of reasons. The main one being, the main catalyst here that actually accelerated this was the China ban, because when you have a lot of the equipment and collateral sitting in China, very difficult to, post that against a forward contract or a swap or something like that.
That's collateral.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what does the two-sided market look like for these instruments that need to exist? I mean, which side are the miners taking and who's taking the other side?
Miners want to be able to lock in. So look, let's take difficulty, right? Difficulty is one of the, volatility components embedded within Hashrate. miners want to be able to protect their pro rata share of expected rewards going forward. So one way they do that is they use a mining pool that deals with variance risk. But if a mining operation is not growing at the rate of growth of the cumulative hash rate of the total network,
They become diluted overall.
They're getting diluted on their expected rewards on a per block basis.
Right.
To lock that in, the funding mechanisms for that, debt facilities, based on what's happened over the last, year and a half or so, most debt facilities to most miners are closed off until we, sort out a lot of the, I would say, bad debt that's in the system. BlockFi, rest in peace. Celsius, rest in peace. But as that gets sorted out, I think some debt facilities will continue to open up a little bit. Selling equity, not terribly attractive to miners. They want the Bitcoin rewards ultimately. So you're really sort of stuck, or you're left with selling production forward, which is how a lot of oil and gas exploration projects, precious metal projects, that's how they finance, right? Streaming, royalty contracts, things like that. But embedded within these contracts are some, insufficient metrics, so to speak. So, pricing hash rate forward, very difficult. One difficulty adjustment, let alone, let's say, a year's worth of cumulative adjustments, next to impossible to price. So you're not going to find a buyer for that. But the miners want to be able to lock that in so that they can protect. There's a long-winded way of saying there's a lot of work to be done on the infrastructure side to build these products out. We've seen some rudimentary derivative products take shape, but we don't have a liquid and robust spot market for hash rate yet. So that would be sort of bedrock for a lot of other really, interesting and impactful risk management, products and services.
And we're getting closer to getting there?
Absolutely.
You guys and others are making progress on this? Because I've been hearing about various types of hash rate derivatives now for years. We know the I guess... I was going to say the supply side, the miners, right? The people that create the hash rate want this. That makes total sense to me. And the question was always, well, who's taking the other side of that bet so that there can be a market? And I guess we haven't come up with great answers, great products, I guess, that make sense for it.
Hodlers, I think, the ability to look at streaming hash rate as a DCA acquisition strategy where you get alongside miners and you get to enjoy some of the, economics of, the profit margin of a mining operation. There are really interesting projects out there. So I'm full disclosure, I'm an investor and an advisor to Luxor Technologies, mining pool out of Seattle, Washington, that does a lot of really fantastic work across the entire hash rate stack. They've been building out non-deliverable, forwards and futures and, some physically settled products. And, we're also seeing great work out of the Brains team. I know we have a New York broker-dealer, Biduda, that's been working with some of these products for a long time. Galaxy, NYDIG, there's a lot of interest here. But there are, I think, a lot of different stakeholders that need to come together to look at these things. So Hash Function would be more of a buy-side operator because we want to, build that Bitcoin treasury, and these products are a good way to do that.
Super interesting. And then let's talk about Pubkey a bit because it's not just a bar.
It's more fun.
Yeah, and you had financial derivatives. Now let's talk about the bar.
Show some range here.
But two things I think that stand out beyond the fact that it's a really cool establishment and a great place to grab a drink with the Bitcoin community in New York. Are the events that you guys have been hosting, and also any expansion plans, because we are seeing, by the way, across the country and even perhaps the world, but certainly across the country, some really interesting physical locations pop up. Right, you've got in Nashville, you've got what's it called?
Bitcoin Park.
Bitcoin Park.
Rod and Matt have done a fantastic job.
It was awesome.
That.
You and I were both there for their mining conference maybe several weeks ago at this point, 2 months ago. And then you've got the guys in Austin also have the Bitcoin Commons. And
also Pleb Lab in Austin. Pleb Lab's in Austin.
Oh, I haven't been there yet.
But yeah, Parker, Unchained Capital have done a fantastic job with the Commons. They host, BitDevs. I actually just got back from there last week. They did the Bitcoin takeover during South by Southwest.
It was awesome.
Yeah, it's great. You get to bop between, some music and some Bitcoin. What's not to like?
I know. So, and then you've got Pubkey now in New York, which I think... it's not, I guess, the right setting. Hasn't been maybe for BitDevs yet, but the BitDevs crew all rolls up there now,
Yeah, we host the after
BitDevs.
party. We're a little bit small, so capacity, the bar's like, it's a sizable bar, especially for the West Village. Our capacity is like 120. But Jay, every single time I talk about Pubkey, I have to thank Jay for all of the work that he's done with BitDevs over the years. And Galaxy's been a huge supporter of BitDevs and cultivating that community. And then, from my perspective, Pubkey really is setting out to support that and build that back because, COVID was pretty destructive, I think, towards the Bitcoin community here in New York.
Yeah, and you've got an event space, though, behind through the bar.
Yep.
Really, literally, it can be tables or chairs. You've done a comedy show that I was there for.
Yep.
You were on Peter McCormack's podcast, which you recorded there, right? And others, when Peter was in New York, recently recorded there.
Yep.
You've done Bitcoin mining meetups there. You did an Ordinals meetup.
Yeah.
So it's
every Monday we have something. So on a monthly basis, we'll have a mining meetup. On a monthly basis, we'll have a lightning meetup. And we have something called the mystery bag, which is a quarterly basis. We'll do regulatory, arts and culture in Bitcoin, and macroeconomics. That's been going well. And then a friend of mine and I host something that used to be called Shitcoin Chicanery, and now it's called I Guess We're Talking About. And that's where we get to take a slightly more like technical view and point out sort of the differentiation between Bitcoin and other projects. So like maybe we'll dive into like Aptos or like God knows what.
Yeah, I love that. And so like in New York or generally though, what's the sort of the future hold you think for the Pubkey brand and experience?
So we're going to need a little bit more time. We took the floor above Pubkey as well, and that's going to be kind of like a co-working space, but more of like a clubhouse for Bitcoiners that don't necessarily have a base of operations here in New York. Maybe they're coming through for fundraising or marketing purposes. They're able to leverage that location and have that base of operations.
Like work there.
Yeah.
So a little bit in the vein of like Bitcoin Park or Bitcoin Commons in that sense.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
Love that.
For sure. And then once we have the foundation, the plan is to open up to other cities. We have a short list. We have, I think five cities are
you ready to
finalists.
Name any of your finalists, or maybe we have to have you back?
It's very much definitely have me back. I don't want to get like too committed. I'm pretty sure I have a good sense of where we're going to go next. The team has a good sense, not just me at Pubkey.
Right.
There's a really fantastic team backing this.
There is.
We have about like 20, 25 people now.
Wow.
It's intense. Hospitality, I have no background whatsoever in hospitality, and oh my God.
Well, I can just tell you, I mean, I have a strong background in going to places that are hospitable to me, and I can tell you that Pubkey is very hospitable, so you're doing something right.
Thank you. I appreciate it. But no, the idea is, so we're going to have a number of different like content touch points. So there's going to be microphones up at the bar. In the back, you can think of it like
microphones at the bar?
At the bar, like for like quick hits, TikToks. Like if there's an interesting conversation, somebody has a question about Bitcoin, somebody behind the bar can, also showcase the things that we're doing at Pubkey.
Cool.
In the back, that's going to be like a comedy club. That's already like the comedy club, small like jazz venue. Like people are able to come see like a presentation or that mining meetup. And then upstairs will be more like, a studio setting. And we want that to be a touch point for each one of the locations. And the connectivity for Pubkeys is going to be that global layer, right? That's the Bitcoin conversation that's happening. And then at a more granular level, each Pubkey should be representative of that location, right? So this is a classic West Village, New York dive bar.
Yeah.
Right. If it were to be in London, it should be a classic English pub and do what is done well there. Do the best you can. Everything should be better than it ought to be, like at the bar, I guess. But that connective tissue is really Bitcoin and the media side of things.
What does it say to you about the state of the Bitcoin adoption cycle that like this is even an idea that's possible, or that you see it in Nashville and Austin, and like it seems to be happening, like especially in a bear market? I mean, is that
honey
badgers?
It's
pretty incredible.
The honey badgers, completely unfazed. I mean, when FTX fell apart, we had a lot of folks just gather there because there are a lot of like crypto folks that were, impacted by that. and they came in for, a beer.
It's literally the flight to safety.
Commiserate.
And by the way, can I get a flight?
Yeah, the flight to safety would be actually.
You should make one, dude. If you guys start doing flights.
I mean, we've seen that through the bear market, and we're also starting to see people, come in and throw some high fives now that we've rebounded a little bit. And, vibes are strong, and getting better.
In good times, it's a place to celebrate, and bad times, it's a place to commiserate.
Yeah.
But either way, the community feels very strong.
Yeah. Historically speaking, alcohol, pubs, taverns have played a very significant role in all sorts of paradigm shifts, technological revolutions.
Think about Hamilton, right? I mean, the second song, My Shot, right? It's about taking shots with his buddies at the bar and plotting the revolution.
What's the one in Boston for the Revere?
Bell in Hand is a famous revolutionary bar. Yeah, there's
the Green Dragon. Was where I think that was where he started or something. But anyway, there's a ton of those in Boston. So
it makes sense.
Sort of like providing this platform basically.
It's very cool stuff.
Thank you.
Let's talk about Bitcoin in general. Here,
okay, I like talking about Bitcoin.
Yeah, you're a guy though who's you've researched Bitcoin, you've worked on you've done investment related stuff in the Bitcoin world. You're building in Bitcoin culture.
Yeah.
You've been a Bitcoin subject matter expert, like at Fidelity.
SME.
A SME, an SME, as they say.
God, I hate that term. I even used it, and every time I do it.
Because a lot has changed. I mean, I want to ask you, maybe we used inscriptions and ordinals as a jumping off point, but then we'll go backwards.
Overwhelmingly positive.
You like it a lot?
Very much so.
What do you like about it?
It's great for miners. If you have block space that is not being utilized in each block, it means that there's diminished value for that. If block space is valuable because you're able to have settlement finality and immutability, that's something that's valuable. And I think ordinals, in some ways accidentally opened up this massive opportunity to prove that block space is valuable.
Yeah.
That inscriptions and inscribing something in the Bitcoin blockchain forever is a really powerful tool. It's going to cause transaction fees. We've already seen it, not massive strides, but it's trending in the right direction.
I mean, we're not really seeing 1 sat per VByte anymore, really.
No.
We haven't really.
No.
It's gotten back down to 2.
And I thought, I think that the 12-fold, the Yuga Labs ordinal launch is underappreciated. Watching that mechanism, it was a 24-hour auction, and in that last 30 minutes, the leaderboard, right? You had to have, you had to place a bid that was in the top 288, whatever.
Yep.
That leaderboard was changing quite a bit in that last, hour or so.
Yeah.
Are you going to get another block before the cutoff?
Right.
Is my bid high enough? It gamified it. It was
quite an interesting mechanism.
It was really, really cool. So anyway, transaction fees go up. Blocks are full. That's good for miners. It allows miners, it's giving some badly needed, revenue boost. It's good for mining pools. We're seeing mining pools play a really interesting role. Luxor specifically is really on top of the ordinal stuff. I'm excited to see some developments coming out of them. It's also good for layer 2. It's pushing a lot of the activity up to layer 2. Before ordinals and before we saw more demand for block space, I think that we were building a tenuous overcapacity situation. Lightning Network is developing quite nicely, but that doesn't matter if the miners are starving and dying because there's no transaction fees. And, as we go, cycle halving after halving, transaction fees must become more robust and sustainable. So I think, ordinals are overwhelmingly positive.
What do you think it says about, the BIP process? Because one of the interesting things to me was that this really did seem to surprise a lot of Bitcoiners. It certainly surprised me.
Yeah.
I wrote about Taproot.
It's a happy little accident.
I kind of didn't realize that Taproot and then obviously SegWit, but combined during the Speedy Trial activation of Taproot, that it could result in lifting completely the arbitrary limit, limit on arbitrary data, that it could actually result in this giant new blob space or call data space, as we say.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird and problematic? I mean, Bitcoiners literally didn't expect this. Don't you think that if during the Taproot debates online and whatnot, if people had really known that ordinals could be possible back then, they might have opposed Taproot?
Yes, I think absolutely. Look, Speedy Trial is a bit of a misnomer, I think, because, the core development community is decentralized, and there are a lot of core developers, and they've done fantastic work. But there's a difference between Bitcoin Core capital C, that's a development project, and Bitcoin Core development lowercase c, where you're actually developing on the protocol. I'd like to see more diversity of development teams. I've done a lot of work with Eric Voskuil in the LeBitcoin project that was founded by Amir Taki. Amir actually created the BIP process way back when.
Right.
He was the first one to, take sort of the proposal system from Linux and apply it to Bitcoin.
Formalize it for Bitcoin.
Yeah, which was tremendously important.
Basically, all the other altcoins have also copied that process for the most part.
Pretty much.
They call them BIPs, EIPs, CIPs, EEPs, yeah.
And Nostr too. They're like NIPs.
Yeah.
But I think we have a situation where we want to see more more diversity of development teams.
Yeah.
With a Speedy Trial, like it's only natural if you work with a group of people on a daily basis, you become friends, you lower your degree of scrutiny or peer review. Not saying that is problematic, but that is where some of the, happy little accidents have come from.
And this was a happy accident. I think we both agree. I think both of us are very positive on inscriptions and ordinals here. So in that sense, it's happy, but it makes me concerned that what if it wasn't a happy accident? It was some other accident that
We've
could be
had
missed.
those before.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been inflation bugs before. Thankfully, everybody is like, we have just unbelievable talent in the development and engineering, components of Bitcoin Core to be able to catch this stuff. But look, the concept of moving fast and breaking things does not really apply to Bitcoin. You got to be really slow and deliberate.
That's what worries me a little bit about and it doesn't, I think this has worked out great, but it makes me a bit bearish on like big BIPs in the future, right? That I think they'll be more narrow and fewer and far between. And I'm someone who in general, although I'm not necessarily advocating for any in particular, but I would like to continue updating Bitcoin. Now, just generally. I don't believe that we should ossify the protocol now.
That's up to the users, right? So so every single upgrade to Bitcoin Core, capital C, is technically an alternative implementation, right? It's adding new features, and it's up to the users whether or not they want to upgrade their node and implement those changes. So it's important to have really educated users and people who are running their own nodes actually are able to dive into the technical differentiation from upgrade to upgrade.
I would say the Bitcoin users, the node runners, are more technical than probably any of the other networks. But are they technical enough for that?
It's the best. I think it's the best one that we have. It's the best. What's the cliche?
Winston
the
Churchill,
best
worst
option, or
yeah,
like
exactly.
Like
It's the
there's always room.
It's the
for
worst
improvement.
option except for all the others.
Yeah, exactly. There's always room for improvement. And look, we have great services that are popping up that are setting up like instances of running your own node. You're effectively trusting those ones. Some give the optionality to upgrade new features, turn features on and off. This is also
You're talking about like the nodes, the physical nodes, like the Umbrel
Yeah,
software,
Umbrel
or
voltage,
my node, et cetera, voltage.
Yeah. And these are fantastic services, and we're seeing the same thing, I would say, in the Lightning space as well, like a Zeus. Offers a tremendous Zeus, by the way, also beloved friend and family of Pubkey. They implemented our Bitcoin and Lightning payments at the pub.
Yeah, the Bloomberg story about Pubkey, which was a pretty good story.
Yeah, still waiting for that update.
Yeah, but they tried to dunk on you. They said the Bitcoin bar that doesn't accept Bitcoin, which has been a dunk that people have done on Bitcoin companies. Or there was a Bitcoin conference one time they dunked on.
I'm just out here LARPing.
But you also could have turned it on quickly with some kind of fully custodial service.
Yeah.
Instead, what did you do?
Well, we wanted something that was more functional. We wanted to be cognizant of, I would say, the regulatory landscape here in New York City. We wanted to do things in the right way. I mean, look, this is smashing together the two most heavily regulated businesses on the planet between a liquor license and Bitcoin. So we want to be pretty deliberate and stay on like the safe side of things, but we want to do Bitcoin stuff, right?
Yeah.
And going about it in the right way is really important. I think we got it up pretty fast, and Zeus is a major.
But you have a non-custodial setup.
Mm-hmm.
You guys hold your own keys or whatever, right? For this thing, and you.
We don't want to like divulge
I'm
too
not
much,
go
but
too
yes,
deep,
we
but
have,
yes.
and we are holding the Bitcoin that we receive.
Oh, so you're stacking. You're
Yes.
using it to stack.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
All of it.
Love that.
All less than 1% of total revenue until it becomes an operational. If it becomes, God willing, it'll become an operational headache where we'll have to.
So many people are paying with Bitcoin. Yeah, because you do accept dollars.
Yeah, well, we got to pay rent, and Con Ed is not going to accept Bitcoin.
Well,
anytime
and
soon.
let's be real. On the payment side, I mean, I spend Bitcoin in some cases, and have for years. But something that I'm literally going to drink. Right? I'd rather, if I'm going to buy something with Bitcoin, if I can,
Yes.
I'd rather be made out of stone
Yes.
or something really valuable.
Please replenish the Bitcoin you spend at Pubkey.
Yeah, exactly. You're literally throwing Bitcoin down your throat.
Yeah,
and
you don't want that. You don't want that 2 or 3 beers to be worth a private jet one day. That would be unfortunate. We all have those stories if it's been around long enough.
We do. Oh, man. This has been great, Thomas.
Cool.
Thanks for coming so much, my friend.
Thank
Thomas,
you so much for having us.
Thomas Pacchia, proprietor of Pubkey, Bitcoin extraordinaire. Thanks for joining Galaxy Brains.
Thank you. Good to be here.
That's it for Galaxy Brains this week. Thank you, as always, for listening. Thank you to our guests, Mike Novogratz, CEO of Galaxy Digital, and Thomas Pacchia, owner and proprietor of Pubkey. That's all we've got for the show. We will see you next week. Have a great weekend. Thanks for listening to Galaxy Brains, the weekly podcast from Galaxy Research. If you enjoy the show, please like, rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. To follow Galaxy Research, sign up for our weekly newsletter at gdr.email, read our content at galaxy.com/research, and follow us on Twitter at GLXY Research. See you next week.